All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started for our last kind of activity session for 490. So my whole goal today is to I'm first of all, I'm kind of scared to ask you guys how you're feeling about life as a student right now, so I'm not going to. I think that it would all be the same answer, and so we're just going to skip that. And what my goal is for today is to kind of go through what the email had in it on Friday, and then start working through or start going through a couple of examples in preparation for the final exam. And so my goal is to kind of push you guys to breakout rooms, let you work for a little bit on some of these scenarios, then come back and we'll talk through them as a class. All right, so as far as announcements this week, so today, of course, is our last Zoom lecture. And so this is the one that is going to be recorded because it tends to have most of the information because most of the people come to this first one. And so if we look at Blackboard, which I think we're doing, there we go. If we look at Blackboard, we are clear down at the bottom in week 15. And so you guys have the briefing and everything here. This week's folder is pretty empty. So the only thing in here is just the announcement and then the extra credit submission link. So as outlined in the syllabus at the beginning of class that we discussed, if you guys are interested in doing some extra credit, you can get up to 20 points worth by reviewing 2 other articles that you haven't used as part of your individual research project, so it doesn't show up in your lit cited, and you didn't use for the journal club assignment at the beginning of the semester. And so you're going to use that format though, so you can go back and look. I believe it's week 4 or week 5 that assignment is in the folder, and you can use that format to review up to 2 new peer-reviewed journals. All right, and if you can submit them both actually through this link here. So you can either do 2 uploads or you can just have it as 1 document. So that's what extra credit looks like this week. And again, it's the only thing in this week's folder. So we'll touch base on the research project in just a second, but just FYI, it looks like I didn't edit my email very well. I'm sorry about that. So I do have office hours this week. If you guys have questions about the class, need clarification on prepping for the final or on your individual research project. So those office hours will be in my personal Zoom room. The link and the passcode are in the email that went out on Friday. And they will be this Thursday, December 10th from 8 to 10 a.m. and this Friday, December 11th from 8 to 10 a.m. So that Friday office hour is the one that is kind of in there wrong. So, but those are office hours this week. So 4 hours of office hours this week. Okay, so let's talk about the research project really quickly. And so with the research project, you guys have kind of everything in this research project folder. So the last thing that we went through was abstracts and conclusions. We did that last week. The abstracts and conclusions slide set is in here, but the recording is back in week 14. And so let me do something real quick just to make it easier on all of us. So I will go back and put it in this folder as well. All right. So it'll be last week's recording where we talked through how to write up the conclusion in the abstract. Will be at the bottom of this folder as well. So, all right. So you guys should have everything that you need to complete the individual research project assignment. So the only thing that we have left is part number 4. And part 4 is edits of part 2 and part 3, plus the abstract and the conclusion, and a full complete list of literature cited. And so it's again worth 50 points, and that is going to be half of the, or part of the final, not half of the final, but part of the final exam. And so the link for part 4 to submit is going to be in a week 16 module that'll show up down at the bottom of the start here menu. And so it'll show up later this week. And so in that module, you will see the submission link for the individual, or for part 4. And again, that is due Friday the 18th by 5 p.m. So the end of finals week. And then you will also see the final exam link as well. And so the final exam is going to be worth 100 points because the project is going to be worth the other 50. And it's going to be a quiz, like on a Blackboard quiz, basically. And so only they call it a quiz, but it's going to be longer. And so it's going to have a series of scenarios in it, and that you'll answer questions about. And so that's what I want to work on today. So the final exam will open up on Friday, December 11th. So this coming Friday by probably 5 p.m., unless I get it up earlier that day. And then it will close a week later. So December 18th, again at 5 p.m. So the final exam and part 4 of the paper are both due December 18th by 5 p.m. And both of those submission links will be in a week 16 module, and I'll light it up. I'll make it red, and I'll try to make it flash and stuff, but it'll be at the very bottom of this page. Okay. Yeah, so as I stated in the email that went out on Friday, the final exam quiz/test portion will be a combination of multiple choice, true, false, matching, maybe some ordering, and short answers. And so you should have, this is me like trying to embrace where we're at with technology right now in the end of the semester. You guys absolutely have the ability to use all of your materials. The only thing that I don't, or that I ask you not to use, is each other. And so you need to take the final exam all in one shot. I'll probably put a 3-hour cap on it rather than the normal 2-hour cap, because I know that the time thing can create some anxiety. I want to make it as low anxiety as possible. And so you guys can have all your materials in front of you, and just don't use each other. That is my my big pet peeve. So anyway, that is where we're at as far as kind of final announcements. Can I answer any questions for you guys before we get going on final exam prep?
Yeah, Dr. Diatley, you said it would open up on the 11th, right? And then just closing on the 18th.
Correct. Yeah. Let me put that in the chat so we have it.
Okay, thank you.
So.
And then for when we return part 4, did you want us to return just part 4 or the entire paper, like all together? Or is there going to be a separate like link to turn in everything together?
There's going to be a separate link that's going to say part 4. And
Okay.
so part 4 is your edited part 2 and part 3, plus the conclusion and an abstract. It's the full paper. Okay, as edited and as pretty and as beautiful as you can make it. Okay, so this is something, this publication is something that you would hand to like a peer review committee or something like that to be published.
Okay.
Good questions. Anything else? Alrighty. Okay, let's switch gears and do some scenario solving stuff. So it might be helpful for you guys to have the attachment that came in Friday's email up. That's got all of the questions on it because there's no way I can fit all that into the chat in an organized format. So that's the reason I wanted to send it to you early so you would have it. I would also maybe recommend pulling up your lecture notes or notes in general about single factor designs and multi-factor designs and regression and correlation. So I'll give you just a quick minute to work on that. And then I'll share my screen and we'll get going with an example.
Dr. Diatley, is the scenario review the 8-question thing you sent?
It is, yes.
Okay. I was just double checking. Thank you.
Yep. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and pull up my screen. Got a quick scenario for you, and it's probably one that we may have gone through once in class before. And let's do, come on. There we go. All right, sorry about that. Okay, so this is just an example that we're going to work through as a class. So some things that we need to make sure that we get down. Some of these examples have other questions at the bottom that you'll need to answer in order or in addition to what I asked for the whole entire assignment that is a part of that Word document. So we'll need to be looking for and determining what the independent variable is, the dependent variable, the experimental unit, and the experimental design. And these scenarios have been designed over a lot of years. These are a combination of Dr. Doyle's scenarios and my scenarios. We've got about probably 65 of them in our battery now to make you guys start to see and start to pull this information together. So up to this point, we have talked individually about what experimental units are, what independent variables are, what dependent variables are. And we've been through several experimental designs, both single factor and multi-factor designs. And so just to reiterate what we're looking for, let me just refresh your memory. So independent variables are things like treatments, okay? Dependent variables are going to be the traits that are going to be measured, or we also call those response variables. The experimental unit is, sorry, there's a dog wanting in, just a second. Come on, Betsy, get in here, come on. Here, go lay down. So annoying, sorry. So the experimental unit is the smallest unit that the treatment can be applied to. And then experimental design is how the experiment is going to be designed. And that goes hand in hand with how you're going to analyze the data. So some things to keep in mind, okay? And you may want to just make a note of this, is whenever we set up an experimental design, there are 3 principles that we have to take into consideration. Okay, and they, you know what? You guys tell me what those principles are, because we've been through them quite often. So what is one of them? One of the principles of experimental design?
Replication.
Yeah, thank you. Replication is one. What's another?
Randomization.
Yep, randomization. Excellent, thank you. And what's the last one?
Local control.
Correct, yes. Okay, I'm feeling way better about life right now, guys. Thank you so much for participating. Replication, randomization, and local control. All right, so if you need to go back and study what those principles are, I believe we hit them really, really hard in week 7, I think. It may not have been week 7, but principles of experimental design. All right, so now as we read through this scenario, be asking yourself, what is the independent variable, the dependent variable, the experimental unit, and then we'll have a discussion about what the experimental design is. Okay, so Gru was working in his evil lair with his trusty employee, Kevin, experimenting with his shrink ray gun when Kevin accidentally pulled the trigger and shrunk half the minion staff. Gru decided to keep the miniaturized staff. He figured that the smaller the worker, the less the feed bill would be. Now, Gru would like to compare the productivity of the miniaturized minions versus his normal sized minions. Gru is interested in comparing the per minion productivity of evil contraptions. After 30 days, Gru will compare the productivity of each group. The minions are of the same strength, age, gender, and IQ. The only difference is half are pint-sized. How would you go about designing the project? All right, so let's just take a second. Okay, I know that this can be a little bit intimidating to throw a huge paragraph at you like this. So in my experience, it's always good to read through it once, pull out what you can, and then go back through and read it again. So I'm going to give you 30 seconds to kind of make some notes here, and then I'm going to go back through and read it again. All right, here we go. So Gru was working in his evil lair with his trusty employee, Kevin, experimenting with his shrink ray gun when Kevin accidentally pulled the trigger and shrunk half of the minion staff. Gru decided to keep the miniaturized staff, figured the smaller the worker, the less the feed bill. Now Gru would like to compare the productivity of the miniature minions versus his normal sized minions. Gru is interested in comparing the per minion productivity of evil contraptions After 30 days, GRU will compare the productivity of each group. The minions are of the same strength, age, gender, and IQ. The only difference is half are pint-sized. How would you go about designing the project? All right, so I'm going to give you 30 more seconds. Make any notes that you need. And then I'm going to ask you some really specific questions. All right. So based on the information given in this scenario, what would be the independent variable here? And feel free to speak up or put it in the chat.
The size.
Okay, the size is correct. We're almost there. Okay, so let's get more specific. How many treatments will there be, or how many independent variables will there be?
2.
Yes, 2. So what is one of them?
The pint-sized minions.
Yep, the pint-sized minions. Good. And what is the second one?
The regular size minions.
Great. Okay, so pint-sized versus regular-sized minions. Those are the 2 treatment groups. All right, so I'm getting very detailed and very specific here because that's what I need you guys to do. All right, so if you're presented with this and you just reply back with the workers or something really general, you're not going to end up getting the full points for it. You need to be as specific as possible. So again, the independent variable here is the normal sized minions versus the pint sized minions. All right, so what would the dependent variable be? And again, please be as detailed as possible.
Would the dependent variable be the productivity of the pint-sized minions?
It is the productivity, okay, but get a little bit more specific because the scenario gave us some very specific verbiage here.
Possibly could it be the productivity of pint-sized minions versus the productivity of the regular control group, like regular size minions?
Okay, so that you're kind of setting up a hypothesis. Don't get too far ahead of yourself, okay, but I appreciate you chiming in. So in the scenario here, maybe it would be better if I just went back to here where I can edit.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. You're fine. Okay. So GRU
Isn't it the productivity of like per minion productivity of evil contraptions?
Yes, it is. So the per minion productivity of evil contraptions. So that's our dependent variable. All right, so keep in mind, we had a discussion about this a little earlier in class, right? So traits like productivity and efficiency are kind of like the silver dollar words, right? They sound fancy, but when you think about them, they aren't very specific. So productivity of evil contraptions is what exactly is going to be measured. So let's make sure that we're trying to be as specific as possible. All right, cool. So we've got our independent variable, we've got our dependent variable. So this wasn't one of the things that we needed to find, but what about local controls? Did you guys notice any local controls in this scenario?
Would one of the local controls be, or like controls be the not shrunken minions?
Nope. So that's actually one of the treatment groups. Okay, so that's an independent variable. Good guess though.
Would it be that they're the same strength, age, gender, and IQ?
Yes, exactly. So the local controls are things that are going to be held constant for all treatment groups. Okay, so both sets of both sets of minions have the same strength, same age, same gender, and same IQ. Cool. All right, so what would the experimental unit here be? So the smallest unit of measurement that a treatment can be applied to.
1 minion.
Yeah, good job, guys. Good job. So one individual minion, sorry, is the experimental unit. All right, so how would you go about designing this project? What would the experimental design be?
Would it be a logistic regression?
Nope, not a logistic regression. So I think you're overthinking it just a little bit. Good guess though.
Are we thinking like single factor or multi-factor design here?
Oh, that's a great place to start. What do you think? Single factor or multi-factor, and why?
I think there would be multi-factor because there's 2 independent variables.
Okay, so there's 2 different treatment groups, but only one level of variables, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the minion groups are the single level of, or the single factor of treatment groups. So this is definitely a single factor design because we are not looking at some other factor of treatment groups. If we were looking at like size of minion and IQ, or size of minion and diet, what they ate, those type of things would be a multi-factor design. Does that help?
Yes.
Okay, cool. All right, so definitely a single factor design. Okay, so within single factor designs, we talked about 3 types, right? So completely randomized design, randomized block design, and Latin square. So knowing what you guys know about those 3, what do you think would be the best experimental design here, and why?
Would it be randomized because they are all the same age, gender, IQ, and strength?
Okay, so be a little bit more specific, Rebecca. What type of randomized design? Because there's completely randomized and there's randomized block.
Completely randomized.
Okay.
All the same. So if we
Okay.
completely
Does anybody agree or disagree?
Agreed.
Agree. Okay. All right. So yes, this experimental design would be a single factor, completely randomized design. Same type of design that we used in both individual projects this semester. All right, so I hope that this kind of introduced the thought process that I would like you guys to kind of think through. Okay, so read the scenario a couple of times and then start with really basic stuff. Start with independent variables, start with dependent variables, then start with experimental unit. Okay, and all of that stuff is going to lead you to the correct experimental design. All right, so let's put this into practice with some of the time we've got left. So if you guys all have your file pulled up, the attachment that I sent in Friday's email, there's 8 different scenarios there. Okay, and I'm going to push you guys into 8 different breakout rooms. Okay, please take note of the breakout room invitation and what room you're actually going to. Okay, so breakout room 1 is going to handle problem 1. Breakout room 2 is going to handle problem 2, all the way to 8. Okay. All right, so I'm going to give you guys 10 minutes to work on this, and then we're going to come back together. And I'm going to have you guys also designate a note taker that is going to put into the chat when you come back your scenario number or the problem number. I'm going to just put this in the chat real quick. Independent variable, dependent variable, experimental unit, and experimental design. Okay, so and we'll talk through a few of those examples. I'm just going to pick some at random, and you guys can jump in and help contribute. But every room is going to put that information for their problem into the chat, and we're building a key. Okay, and I'm going to go through and try to proof it really, really quickly, and then you guys can download the chat and have it to study from. Okay. All right, so let's go to breakout rooms. And everybody leaves. It is what it is. Okay. 8 breakout rooms. We're going to go 10 minutes. If you get done early, come back. All right. You should have an invitation.
We finished.
Great. We'll just hang out for a little bit until everybody else comes back. Got only 2 minutes left. Which one did you guys have?
Number 1.
Okay, awesome. Kira, if you want to go ahead and put the answer to number 1 in the chat, we'll be ahead of the game. Thank you.
The only thing on this one that I was slightly iffy of is whether or not the experimental unit would be a tank of bass fish or one singular bass.
Okay, good question. Let me read it again. I've got like 500 scenarios in my head right now. Okay, you're asking the right questions, and I think that this is an important one for us to talk about. So, if you wouldn't mind, we'll go through it first, okay?
Okay, that's fine.
Sort of treatments to be.
Okay, everybody's on their way back in. Okay, awesome. So I hope that helped kind of working through it in groups. If you were the designated note taker for your group, if you could put in that information that we talked about in the chat, like 2 other groups have done, that would be appreciated. We're going to go ahead and start with scenario number 1. Okay, so let me just pull it up here. And I'll share my screen. Okay, there we go. All right, you love striped bass so much that you've decided to investigate alternative production practices of the industry in order to produce bigger striped bass more efficiently, so in less time. More specifically, you're going to work with a local hatchery to investigate the effects of alternatives to using baby brine shrimp during the initial feeding period on the growth of bass fry. You have a control, which is baby brine shrimp, Art Mac, a prepared food, Algamac, another prepared food, dried Daphnia, and decapsulated shrimp casts. You randomly assign a diet to one of 5 tanks full of fry. What are your concerns, if any, regarding replication? And then be sure to complete a discussion of your experimental units in your answer. All right, so Kira, were you the note taker for your group?
I was. Do I need to repaste it in there?
No, you don't. I was just gonna have you talk through it. So could you tell us what your group came up with for the independent variable?
Yeah, sorry. We said the independent variable was, 1 second. We said it was diet during initial feeding.
Yep, that's
period.
great. How many treatment groups will you have?
5.
Yeah, 5. So this is a big trial, right? Okay, cool. So the area in yellow refers to the independent variable for this scenario. What did you guys have for the dependent variable?
We have growth/weight of bass fry at the end of the initial feeding period.
Awesome. Yep. So we'll just highlight growth of bass fry here. All right, cool. So the next question I want to ask you is experimental unit, but it actually brings up a great point of discussion. So what are your initial thoughts about experimental unit?
We were initially thinking that the experimental unit would be 1 singular striped bass, and that's what we ended up going with, but we were also contemplating having the experimental unit be 1 tank of bass.
Great. Okay, so this is where the definition of an experimental unit becomes really important. So experimental unit is the smallest unit that a treatment can be applied to. So normally, if we had an individual feeding situation to where we could hand feed the control treatment or the Artemac or the Algemac treatment to an individual fry, bass fry, then we could make that individual fry the experimental unit. But because the scenario here is telling us that we are randomly assigning each one of these 5 diets to one of 5 tanks, that tells us that the tank actually has to be the experimental unit here. Okay, so each tank is going to be designated to a specific treatment. So the control treatment is going to be in 1 tank. Artemac is going to be in a 2nd tank. Algemac in a 3rd tank, and so on. So that is why there's this question in here if you have a concern about replication. So did you guys come up with any concerns here?
We had a concerns just like regarding the growth of bass, that genetics plays a really large role in how big a bass will grow. And so like you would have to have genetically extremely similar bass in order for this to be like give you good results.
Yep. You definitely do. And so that's why we're selecting from like a pretty small genetic pool would be a benefit. It could be a local control here. So what about replication though? Like keep in mind, so replication is the number of replicates that you have per treatment. In this scenario, with the information they gave you, how many replications do you have per diet or per treatment right now?
Wouldn't it be however many? Oh no, 1 tank.
Yeah. So why is that a big red flag based on what we learned about the importance of replication?
Well, if there's only 1, then you have nothing to compare it against. So you would have to have at least like 6 tanks per diet.
Exactly, or at least 3 per diet, right? So a minimum of 3 per diet. So that is the red flag. So your concern is that this study is not replicated. Okay, so it's not going to have any N for the treatment. So N equals 1 for each treatment here. And so that doesn't give you any statistical power. And so that's something that you just need to kind of be aware of. Now, if the scenario could be edited or you could change it, and that would be noted in the problem, then you could change it to have like at least 3 tank per treatment. And then N becomes 3 for each treatment, and you have some statistical power there. All right, so does that make sense, you guys, as far as like a way to kind of critically think through these scenarios? Just give me a thumbs up in your reactions, or if you're on camera. I guess I'm the only one on camera.
Wait, I have one question. What was the independent variable one more time?
So the independent variable is the treatment. So there were 5 of them. There was the control, the Artemac, the Algemac,
Oh, okay.
and there was 2 more. I can't remember them off the top of my head.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And so Kira and her group put all that information in here in the chat. Okay. So it's up in the chat if you need to see it.
I don't see it in the chat.
Yeah, I don't see it in the chat either.
Oh, okay.
Was it sent to everyone or?
Yeah, it should be here. I'll just copy and paste it.
I just posted it again. They didn't get it because they weren't in here when I posted it in the chat.
Okay, got it. Thanks, Kara.
Thank you.
Okay, so sorry, we're way over time, guys. I have, after an entire semester, have not gotten breakout rooms and group discussions and stuff down. So, so I think everybody else have not put. So if you guys have your information for your scenario ready to go, just go ahead and put it into the chat, and then we'll save the chat. There we go. Dependent. Okay, so Matt, with your scenario, what is your block?
The randomized block?
Yeah. So what is the block in your design?
We had, here, let me go. There was just 4 different, what do you call it? 4 different fertilizers. So they aren't separated into blocks for that, for the radish growth.
Okay, so keep in mind a block is a known source of variation, and that field was uniform. So do you need a randomized block design, or can you use just a completely randomized design?
Okay, you can use completely randomized.
Yeah, yep, and not give up another degree of freedom. So that gives you more power in the ANOVA analysis. So do you mind just repasting number 7 with a completely randomized design and not randomized block?
Yeah.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, group number 5, you guys got it. So it's a regression analysis. Number 6, let me look up number 6. Okay. Independent, yes. Dependent, yes. Okay, so Erica, are you still on?
Yeah.
Okay, so you guys are really close. The experimental unit is the only thing that is off here, because those teaching methods would need to be applied to an entire class and not an individual student. Does that make sense? Because you're in like one classroom.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, so yeah, so the experimental unit there would be individual class. Cool. Okay. Number 8. Greenhouse. Okay, I think number 8 is right. Yep. Cool. Okay, you guys have gotten a good handle on this. So I'm gonna put a key up. So you guys will have it to study from for these 8 scenarios. And if you have questions about them, drop by during office hours on Thursday or Friday morning. All right, sorry that my timing is off and I can't organize a Zoom session very much. If you guys want to hang out, we're gonna go through a similar exercise at 3 and at 4. If not, the recording will be up hopefully late tonight by the time it gets posted. So thank you guys for a great semester. I know it has been a challenging one. Thanks for sticking in there. I'm so sorry that this was our experience. And yeah, we'll see you when we see you. I won't get to talk with you guys another time. So have a good one.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Diatley.